Number 23. Watch his facial expressions and recalibrate. I'm going to give you some advice that should dynamically change the way you communicate with a man. Ready? Here it is. Pay careful attention to his body language, specifically his facial expressions. One thing that my wife has learned about me is my facial expressions and how to use it to navigate a conversation. To get her way, of course. When we first started out together, being her passionate self, she wouldn't pay close attention to how what she was saying was affecting me. If she hit a sensitive issue for me by mistake, she wouldn't notice it because she'd be too caught up in her own emotions, trying to say what's on her mind no matter what. As she began to figure out what makes me tick and what turned me off, she'd know if she touched on a sensitive issue just by watching my body language, specifically my facial expressions. If she did touch on a sensitive issue, she'd know whether or not to tread carefully, drop the issue, change the subject, or apologize. Over time, I noticed that her willingness to not go there made her much more attractive to me, and she wouldn't have been able to do so if she hadn't trained herself to take note of my facial expressions. That's the beautiful thing about loving your man. Over time, you'll figure out what makes him tick, so that you can communicate with him in a more compassionate way. The benefit to this sort of communication is that he'll never shut you out because he knows that you always have his best interest at heart. Number 24. Be an active listener. One of the most powerful communication techniques I've come across is called active listening. You can check that out on Wikipedia if you want more. I first heard about it in a phenomenal book by best-selling author the late Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Applied to communicating with a man, the skill of active listening is all about empathizing with your man and getting him to realize that you do empathize with him. It's the meaning behind the slang term, "Do you feel me?" When a man feels that you understand him, he drops all his defenses and communication flows effortlessly. Most people communicate by waiting to speak. They fill their mind with what they want to say to the other person instead of clearing their mind of their own thoughts to leave room for truly listening to what the other person is saying. The act of active listening requires you to listen attentively, then paraphrase and reflect on what he says while acknowledging how he feels without judgment or advice. Listen to that again. Paraphrase and reflect on what he says while acknowledging how he feels without judgment or advice. Here's an example of this in action. Let's say he comes home from work and says, I really hate my job. I feel like a useless cog in a machine and it's starting to get to me." Don't say, "Maybe you should look for another job." That's you giving common sense advice he could have gotten from his friends. Don't even say something like, "Well, no use complaining about it. I told you that moving here was a waste of time." That's being judgmental and quite annoying. Instead, follow up with something like, "Your job stresses you out and you don't feel like you're utilizing your true potential." This response will get him to agree with you because you understand how he feels. He'll keep talking until 1. He chooses to talk about a solution, or 2. He realizes that he's just having a bad week, etc., and feels relieved to talk about it. It's a simple example, but it should get you started on the right path. I'd advise really studying this form of communication because it can improve every area of your life.